General Hospital will reveal interesting facts on Monday, June 2, 2025. First, assuming the court date proceeds as scheduled, Michael prepares himself for an intense legal battle. Determined to gain full custody of Amelia and Wiley. With the hearing set for June 2, he enlists the help of Diane, a fierce and experienced attorney who has left nothing to chance. Diane is armed with a wealth of damning evidence against Drew, most notably a disturbing video that threatens to turn the entire case in Michael's favor. This isn't just about parental fitness anymore, it's about exposing the truth behind the carefully constructed image Drew has tried to maintain. The video, recorded in the Quartermaine Playroom, a place once believed to be a sanctuary for children, paints a damning portrait of Drew's spiraling life. In the footage, Drew can be seen in a compromised state. Recording himself as a sex worker lays across him, clearly under the influence of something potent. The chaotic setting, mixed with his erratic behavior and incoherent speech, serves as an undeniable indicator of drug use and mental instability. This video alone shatters any remaining illusion that Drew is a stable guardian capable of raising children. Michael knows this is his chance to ensure that Amelia and Wiley are removed from an environment tainted by reckless behavior and substance abuse. He presents the video not only as proof of Drew's moral collapse but also as a direct threat to the safety and emotional well-being of the children. In Michael's eyes, keeping them close to Drew is akin to exposing them to a ticking time bomb. He is adamant that the children deserve a home built on stability, not chaos, on clarity, not secrets. Meanwhile, Willow finds herself caught in a psychological firestorm. Once loyal to Drew and blinded by hope, she now has to accept the consequences of ignoring red flags for far too long. Her name appears in the court documents, not as a neutral figure, but as someone who knowingly allowed Drew's presence to influence the children's lives. The guilt begins to overwhelm her, as her silence and denial are now on trial just as much as Drew's behavior is. Diane capitalizes on these weaknesses. She questions Willow's judgment, her reluctance to intervene, and the choices she made in prioritizing her relationship with Drew over the children's safety. The courtroom becomes a stage for dissecting every decision Willow made, from ignoring the late-night disappearances, to dismissing Drew's unstable moods, to shielding him from questions he never answered honestly. Under cross-examination, Willow starts to crumble, unable to justify the blind faith she placed in a man unraveling at the seams. Michael's case is bolstered not just by Diane's strategy but by his own unshakable image as a devoted father. His record is spotless. His actions consistent with someone who puts his children's welfare above all else. He attends every school meeting, knows their routines, and never once placed them in harm's way. In contrast to Drew, Michael presents himself as the embodiment of parental responsibility, steady, transparent, and focused on the future. Outside the courtroom, the fallout spreads quickly. The video leaks, and public opinion turns harshly against Drew. Former supporters retreat in embarrassment or disgust, while whispers about past behavior grow louder. Drew finds himself isolated, not only legally but socially. What began as a private custody hearing has now become a public reckoning, and Drew has no defense strong enough to salvage what remains of his reputation. As the judge reviews the evidence, the weight of truth becomes impossible to ignore. Michael doesn't just want custody, he wants to protect his children from the emotional and psychological wreckage Drew threatens to leave behind. Regardless of the final ruling, Michael knows one thing with certainty: he has done everything within his power to shield Amelia and Wiley from a life built on lies, instability, and danger. Whatever happens next, the path he has chosen was paved by love, determination, and the courage to stand against even the most painful truths. Second, however, Rick is not a man easily underestimated. Especially in a courtroom where pressure breeds ruthlessness. With his years of experience and deep understanding of legal strategy, he knows exactly how to weaponize every piece of ambiguity and twist every narrative to his client's advantage. Under the guidance and desperation of Willow and Drew, Rick prepares to push boundaries. willing to do whatever it takes to paint Michael not as a loving father, but as a manipulative, untrustworthy figure who uses power and influence to mask deeper flaws. Rick's tactics are precise and brutal. He begins undermining Michael's credibility by subtly questioning his motives, portraying him as someone obsessed with control rather than concerned for his children's well-being. Behind closed doors, Rick builds a web of character assassinations, speculating that Michael's actions are fueled by ego, revenge, and the desire to punish Willow and Drew for their past choices. In Rick's framing, Michael is no hero, he's a calculated adversary, using the court system to inflict emotional harm under the guise of fatherly concern. As the trial progresses, Rick prepares to unleash his most dangerous weapon, Sasha. Once merely a name in Michael's tangled past, she is now the linchpin to Rick's entire strategy. Her appearance in court, called to the stand under the pretense of offering objective insight, becomes a ticking time bomb. Sasha has secrets that Rick intends to drag into the light, regardless of the collateral damage. What's worse, Nina, who has quietly gathered the truth about Sasha's pregnancy, now holds in her hands the one piece of information that could shatter Michael's entire legal foundation. The revelation that Sasha is carrying Michael's child, hidden until now, explodes like a grenade in the courtroom. It raises questions not only about Michael's integrity but also about his duplicity in shielding the existence of this unborn child from the very proceedings meant to determine his parental fitness. Rick seizes the moment with the precision of a predator, claiming that Michael's failure to disclose such a critical truth reveals a deep pattern of deception, selfishness, and disregard for the legal system. What follows is a complete unraveling of the image Michael worked so hard to maintain. Diane scrambles to regain control of the narrative, but the damage is done. Rick's insinuations evolve into outright accusations. Was Michael trying to hide the pregnancy to manipulate the custody outcome? Is he a man who discards one woman for another, fathering children without accountability? Every word Rick utters is designed not to prove truth, but to ignite doubt in the judge's mind, doubt in the public, and most painfully, doubt in the heart of Michael himself. Sasha's emotional state teeters on collapse as she's cross-examined. Her voice shakes, her answers are cautious, and the courtroom begins to see her not as an impartial witness but as a deeply entangled figure in Michael's personal life. Nina watches from the sidelines, knowing her revelation has changed everything. Her vendetta, long simmering beneath the surface, now has a face, a target, and a consequence that even she did not fully anticipate. Whether it was vengeance, jealousy, or just recklessness, her act has detonated the one truth that could cost Michael everything. Michael, stunned and blindsided, begins to grasp the full scope of the betrayal. The courtroom, once his arena of justice, now feels like a crucible of shame. What began as a straightforward custody battle has morphed into a full-scale character trial, and the scales are no longer tipping in his favor. In mere moments, his credibility, his relationships, and his dreams of protecting his children hang in the balance, not because of what he did wrong, but because of what he failed to reveal. As the hearing draws closer to its climax, Michael must now fight a battle on multiple fronts, against legal accusations, public scrutiny, and the ghosts of his own decisions. Sasha's pregnancy, once a private matter, is now a public scandal. Rick has done what few lawyers could, flipped the narrative with surgical precision. And as Willow, Drew, and Nina stand complicit, Michael is left alone to pick up the shattered remnants of a life he believed was secure. The war for custody has become a war for truth, and in this new arena, no one walks away unscathed. Third, even Nina, despite her usual poise and mastery in social manipulation, may find herself dangerously close to unraveling under the intense scrutiny of Diane's cross-examination. In the courtroom, every word is a weapon, and Diane knows how to wield them with surgical precision. Nina, seated uncomfortably in the witness chair, might begin the proceedings with calm confidence. But as Diane's questions begin to penetrate deeper, veiled with innocence yet laced with implication, cracks start to appear in her composure. The pressure mounts as Diane subtly shifts the focus toward Nina's associations, particularly those shrouded in secrecy or suspicion. Questions about her involvement with Drew, at first indirect and casual, slowly begin to tighten like a noose. Nina's instinct is to deflect, to protect herself and the fragile alliances she's maintained. But in a single moment of emotional vulnerability, a misstep could occur, an unintended confession, a slip of the tongue that exposes more than she ever intended. The mere suggestion of a past romantic entanglement with Drew could be enough to send shockwaves through the court. Should that past connection surface, the repercussions would be immediate and far-reaching. Willow, already emotionally stretched and under legal fire, would be thrust into a whirlwind of betrayal, confusion, and humiliation. Discovering that Nina, a woman she has struggled to tolerate, let alone trust, had once been involved with Drew would be devastating. It wouldn't simply taint the courtroom narrative. It would shatter the personal dynamics that underpin this already volatile case. Suddenly, the lines between legal battles and personal vendettas would blur beyond recognition. For Willow, such a revelation would be like reopening wounds she had tried so hard to heal. The betrayal wouldn't just come from Drew, but from Nina, someone who had positioned herself as a moral commentator, while hiding intimate truths that directly impacted the lives of those around her. Willow might begin to question whether Drew's loyalties had ever truly belonged to her, or if their relationship had been a carefully curated lie rooted in ulterior motives. The foundation of trust she thought she had, however fractured, would collapse in an instant. Nina's credibility would also take a significant hit. Her role in the courtroom, whether as a witness or a peripheral party, would be reevaluated under an entirely different lens. No longer a concerned grandmother or neutral observer, she would be seen as someone with vested emotional interests and a hidden agenda. Diane, recognizing the advantage, would not hesitate to exploit every nuance, painting Nina as a manipulator who meddles in family affairs under the guise of concern but operates from a deeply compromised position. The courtroom would descend into chaos, not through shouting or disruption, but through the quiet, unsettling shift of perception. Trust would vanish. Motives would be questioned. The judge, watching all unfold, would take mental note of every emotional tremor and contradiction. What began as a battle for custody would morph into a reckoning of loyalties, secrets, and the dangerous entanglement of personal history in legal proceedings. Michael, witnessing the unraveling of yet another layer of deception, would feel the bitterness of betrayal burn deeper. First Sasha, now Nina, each revelation pulling him further from the path of certainty and closer to the abyss of emotional implosion. His belief in the stability of his support system would be shaken, if not destroyed entirely. The people he once thought were by his side seem now like shadows with hidden knives. And he must face the realization that the truth has been more fragmented than he ever imagined. Ultimately, the exposure of Nina's past with Drew, if it comes to light, could be the final unraveling of a case already teetering on the edge. It wouldn't just damage reputations, it would sever relationships, ignite emotional firestorms, and leave behind scars that no courtroom ruling could ever heal. The trial, once a battle for parental rights, would become a mirror reflecting the deepest insecurities, secrets, and betrayals of every soul entangled in its web. Finally, in another unfolding drama far from the courtroom battles consuming Michael and Willow, Curtis and Portia find themselves at a harrowing crossroads in their marriage, one marked not by a single betrayal, but by a slow accumulation of secrets, omissions, and half-truths that have eroded the trust between them. For Curtis, a man who has endured enough upheaval to know the value of honesty, the realization that Portia may have been lying to him all along becomes a weight he can no longer carry. The breaking point has arrived, and the consequences are impossible to ignore. Portia, despite her best efforts to maintain a sense of control, begins to see the truth of her situation reflected in Curtis's distant gaze and clipped silences. She had always convinced herself that her lies were for the greater good, to protect her daughter, to protect Curtis, to protect a vision of family she had clung to for so long. But protection and deception are two sides of the same coin, and in trying to shield the people she loves, she has only driven them further away. The illusion of stability she maintained for so long is now crumbling, and there's no easy way to rebuild what has already rotted at the core. Curtis has reached a threshold of pain that leaves no room for compromise. He revisits every moment of their marriage through the lens of betrayal, every time he trusted Portia. Every promise she made that now rings hollow, every decision he supported based on a version of truth she selectively offered. The heartbreak isn't just about what she did. It's about how long she kept doing it, believing he would never see through the mask. And now, with clarity that comes only from emotional devastation, he begins to understand that love without trust is nothing more than sentiment dressed in denial. The final decision doesn't come in anger, but in sorrow. Curtis quietly resolves that the marriage cannot be salvaged, not because he no longer loves Portia, but because love has become secondary to the damage caused by deception. In his heart, he knows that if he stays, he will always question her, always wonder if the truth she offers is real or just another carefully crafted version of reality. And for a man who has rebuilt himself from so much past pain, the idea of living in permanent doubt is too unbearable to accept. Portia is shattered. She had hoped that time would heal. That Curtis would soften, that their love would somehow be enough to override the consequences of her choices. But hope is not redemption. And she is forced to reckon with the reality that some wounds cut too deeply to be closed with apologies. She sees in Curtis's eyes the end of their story, not a violent or dramatic ending, but a quiet, irrevocable goodbye laced with mourning for what could have been. As Curtis walks away from the home they built together, from the dreams they once shared, the silence between them speaks louder than any words ever could. It is the silence of finality, of a chapter closed not out of hatred, but because one heart can no longer carry the weight of another's deception. Portia watches him go, a part of her still whispering that this is a mistake. But the larger part, the honest part, knows she is the architect of her own heartbreak. And so, the marriage dissolves into memory, leaving behind questions that will never be fully answered and regrets that will echo for years. In the end, it wasn't a single lie that destroyed them, it was the steady, corrosive drip of dishonesty that made forgiveness impossible. Curtis may find peace again one day, and Portia may find clarity in solitude, but the love they once had will remain frozen in time. A beautiful tragedy undone by the very secrets meant to protect it.